start with a roll call by the secretary. Mark?
Jonathan Blake. Here. Jim Garrettson. Judy Hagan.
Here?
Jen.
Here.
Katie Mueller.
Here.
Josh Orahood.
Here.
And John Shapiro.
Present.
And Reedy.
Present.
And myself. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I will call the meeting of the March 11th, 2025 meeting of the Carmel Clay Board of Parks and Recreation to order at 6:05. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business will be public comments, and we don't have any public with us except the spouses and retiring board members. So, Michael, if you would come forward. We're going to recognize the representative from the school board. Katie, if you would please step forward. We have a presentation for you, and thank you for your loyal service on the park board as our school board representative. We've enjoyed having you on board and your expertise and input. So we know you're going to enjoy retirement, but thank you for your service. Do you want to say anything?
Thank you for all of those who have. Thank you for all those who have served, past and present. You have been a fine example to our community. It has been the utmost privilege to serve our parks and the children and families. I'm very proud of our partnership with ESC and Carmel Clay Schools. Is something that I cherish, and I'm glad I was a part of it, and am so honored to be a board member for over 3 years. So thank you so much, and to my community, thank you so much also.
And the photo for this one was very much on topic. So a photo from Extended School of Richmond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation will be to longtime board member Linus Rude, who is retiring. And Linus, would you step forward and accept a token of your service? And we appreciate your long service, especially during a bit of a tumultuous time of the pandemic, and keeping us all on track. Thank you very much. Do you want to say anything other than?
Yes, I'll say a couple of words. I'd like to say that it was quite the honor to be a part of this board for the length of time that I was, going through the things that we went through, as you mentioned, and you know, going through COVID and all that, and doing our Zoom calls or team calls from home. That was sometimes a challenge. But it was also an honor to serve the citizens of the city of Carmel and the township of Carmel. So I really relished my time, really enjoyed it, enjoyed everybody I worked with on the board, staff as well. Couldn't ask for a better group of people to be a part of. Thank you very much.
And Linus's photo was of the bison and calf statue in Central Park. So.
I guess we have enough photos of everybody together on videos over the years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. And as we always say to our guests, do not feel that you have to stay for the meeting if you would like to leave. We will not be offended. Thank you for your service and the many hours that you've put in sitting up here. Good night.
I told them they had to stay, Judy, but okay.
Our next order of business is officer vacancy. Lynn has resigned from the board, and so we have her replacement. I guess it's Josh.
That's correct.
Technically, it's that
Lynn
slot.
Zhang, who had just been appointed to a new 4-year term, due to changes in her work schedule. She's a professor at IU Indianapolis and involved in a lot of education for students from across the world. So her schedule is such that she felt that she could not give enough time to the park board that it deserves, especially in her role as treasurer, so she elected to resign. The mayor was very prompt in identifying a replacement, so we're pleased to have Josh join us, and I don't know if you want to, if Judy wants you to say a few words about yourself.
Would you like to go ahead and do that now? Go ahead.
My name's Josh Orahood. I've lived in Carmel for, 12, 13 years, I think now. Father of 3. All of our kids went to Carmel schools, Cherry Tree, Carmel Middle, and Clay Middle, and then now they're in Carmel High School. I'm a small business owner, and I actually live in Carmel because I decided to start my business and refused to move to Louisville to take a director role. And I'm a private pilot, just did that this year, and just love the outdoors and trying to help out.
Thank you, and welcome to the board, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay, now
So-
what's our next step here?
Yeah, so the next thing that transpired with Lynn resigning, she, of course, was recently elected as the treasurer, so that officer position is now vacant. After conferring with legal counsel, there's no protocol that you have to have a nominating committee reconvened for filling those officer vacancies. After discussions with existing leadership, what we are recommending is that Mark be, if you will, promoted from the role of secretary to the now vacant role of treasurer, which of course then leaves the secretary position open. And it's our recommendation that Katie Mueller be voted in as the new secretary. So that would be our recommendation for the board's consideration, and that is an action that does require board approval.
Okay, would someone like to make that nomination for both?
So moved.
Thank you. Jonathan moved.
Second.
Jen second. All those in favor of Mark moving into the treasurer position and Katie taking the secretary position?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations. Thank you for accepting the work going forward. We'll move on to staff reports.
Thank you, Madam President. Staff reports are included in your park board packets. A little light on earned media this month. We did add one article, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have as it pertains to the division reports or trailing pass graphs or whatever it might be, so.
Sorry. Give you just a minute or two, and if there are any questions for staff, signify. I have one question, Curtis, I want to ask. Are there corporate membership rates just are always sort of at that level, and that's just what they are all the time, right?
So our corporate program allows, depending upon the size of the business, they have to buy into our program, and then their employees get a 20% discount. So it depends on the size of the business.
Okay. Because that's a new program from,
We've had it for a while.
Well, I know you've had it, but to
It's-
me,
It's
so-
changed over time, but I think it's been in its current format for the last 10 years or so.
okay.
And it's a program that we haven't been really big in doing a big push for additional ones because it is a discounted program. So we would much prefer to have memberships at our regular rates, which better contributes to the cost recovery expectations of the department. It's not that we're opposed to corporate memberships, but that's not, it is a discounted program. So obviously discounted program has smaller margin for overarching financial goals.
So this is not really, this is representing numbers of businesses on this line, or?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, number
okay,
of
got it.
businesses.
So it just never much changes. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
And the biggest participants in that program, quite frankly, are Carmel Clay Schools and the city of Carmel.
I have to clarify because I think you're asking about the pass graph, correct? That represents the memberships, not the number of businesses.
Okay,
So these are the members that have active memberships at the community center.
okay.
I could give you some additional information on the number
No,
of
no,
of
I've
businesses that are in the
noticed
program, though.
since
It's-
I came back on the board that it doesn't seem to move. Everything else goes up and down, but it sort
Yeah,
of
it
stays
stays-
flat.
It's a
and
pretty
so-
steady
And the
number.
numbers themselves sort of go up and down, so that's what I
Correct.
was asking. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? All right, we will move on to committees. Finance Committee, our treasurer is the chair of the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee did not meet.
Is now the time to
I
make
think
my
it's
appointment
appropriate
Okay.
to announce the new lineup for the Finance Committee.
And then I have asked Jen if she will move into the Finance Committee. Mark will be the chair. Katie was already a member, and Lynn, of course, would have been the chair. So to have three folks on, I've asked Jen to serve, and she has accepted. So, thank you. The Strategic Funding Committee.
It has not met either.
Let's move on to minutes. Mark, I'll let you handle that.
I move to approve the minutes of the Park Board meeting on February 11th, 2025.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay. Gotta get. Shoot. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item are the financial reports, the consolidated reports. I'll let you go ahead and take that, Mark.
I move to acknowledge the receipt of the consolidated financial report of January 2025.
Second.
Do you want to do this, the P and L
Want to do that
statements
with
Yes.
together as we've done?
I also move to acknowledge receipt of the P&L statements of February 2025.
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan, for seconding. Any questions for staff? Jen, go ahead.
I know we missed it last month. We were a little out of sync. Can you please, Curtis, tell everyone how we ended up for the year, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so all of our non-reverting funds, 108, 109, and 110, did finish the year at 100% cost recovery, which is what we aim for. I don't remember the exact percentage, but I know the MCC had a banner year. I think they had net income of almost $1.1 million, so it's pretty impressive. ESC had a phenomenal year as well. Actually, across the board, our staff did a tremendous job of managing their budget, so very proud of them. And I think we're off to a little bit of a slower start this year, but I think we'll rebound in the next couple of months, so. I did have a point of clarification. I think we talked about the cover sheets for the profit and loss statements last month and why we're doing those this year. You might have noticed on the 109 fund P&L cover sheet, there's an area that's highlighted in yellow. There was an updated cover sheet that didn't get added to your park board packets, but I just wanted to provide that clarification so that you guys knew kind of, we're looking at building repairs and maintenance. We've been having some issues with our air handler units. In February, we had to fix a controller and a free stat on one of them. And then we had to add or repair a triple duty control valve on our chiller secondary pump. That's a tongue twister. That was something that wasn't included as part of the guaranteed energy savings contract, so that transpired in February. And we had some damper actuators that actually have been acting up as well. And then in March, it's not represented in this P&L statement, but next month when you see the P&Ls, you're going to notice that this line item has gone up even more because we just had some additional issues with one of our air handler unit 7. So more to come on that next month, but I just want to kind of give you a heads up that we're having some, it's an aging building. It's not out of the ordinary to have some components of your mechanical systems that start to age and go bad. We do a lot of PMs, preventive maintenance on those systems. We do anticipate them, continuing to last for many more years, but You know, every now and then you're gonna have a larger repair that you have to make, and unfortunately, those are hitting at the beginning of 2025. So I'll keep you apprised if, you know, there's anything that's worrying me or whatever, but just want to make the board aware of that.
Are those included in the capital improvement forecasts?
So the big picture air handling units as a collective whole are factored into our asset management plan and capital improvement plan. The different components are not necessarily done so, but sort of collectively are. So the answer is not exactly, but generally speaking, in a holistic manner, they are. So like one of the units that he's talking about, the repair is going to be a $45,000 replacement expense. When we have those types of repairs, one of the things that we do look at is what's causing it to make sure, is it regular wear and tear? And we are talking about an 18-year-old building now, which is hard to believe, but it is our reality. So some of it is very much related to that. The other thing that we look at is what's the regular life cycle for that equipment? And, you know, does it make sense? $45,000 seems like a lot of money. But at the same point, what we look at is, okay, does it make sense maybe to replace the entire air handler unit at this time, which is factored into our big picture asset management plan. To replace an air handling unit brand new is $250,000. So a $45,000 repair, if all the other systems are in good order, makes a lot more sense than spending $250,000. So our asset management plan factors that $250,000, probably another 7 years down the road. But at the same point, you know, we're balancing all of that out together. And in this particular case, for these repairs, it made more sense to make the repairs than incur a $250,000 expense for the big picture repair.
I'd add too that we had all of our air handler units assessed when we did the guaranteed energy savings contract, and Ameresco was very impressed with how well kept our mechanical systems were. So this was not something that they thought that we needed to replace prematurely. So I do think that, like Michael said, we're going to get another 7 to 12 years or more out of the systems that we've got. We're just incurring some additional expenses right now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
Curtis, you're talking about Air Handler 7, which my memory serves, we had problems with early on, as well as 10. And does any of that relate back to the original problems we had, or do you know?
I don't think so,
And was
Michael.
7 the one that was leaking downstairs?
No, that's something different. 7 is up in fitness, near where a bunch of our lighting controls are. And so it actually, when we had the initial leak, it got into our controls and we had to do some additional repairs as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. But Michael did have me do an assessment of all of our air handler units, and, you know, we've had some issues with, most of them have had some components that have failed over the course of time, but nothing to this extent. I mean, most of the repairs have been a couple of $1,000s here and there. So the coils it's a big deal. I mean, we actually had we have another one, air handler unit 10 now, that we're assessing because we think the coils might be failing on it as well. So we may be replacing coils on 2 of them this year. And obviously, when we have issues like this, we don't just go in and make the repair. We want to get down to the root of what is the issue, what's causing this, to make sure that when we make the repair, the issue doesn't repeat itself. So is something not operating properly, you know, is a louver not closing at night, you know, there's a lot of fail safes in place, but you always want to make sure that you check all the boxes so that when you make the repair, you know, you aren't incurring that same expense a couple of months down the road because it repeats itself.
So if I heard you correctly, Michael, by spending the $45,000, do we move the needle on the overall replacement, you think?
I believe that we will. You know, I believe this is one of the things, and especially based on the assessment that Ameresco did when they did the energy savings project for us, viewing how great overall our equipment was. I do believe that this buys us some extra time as opposed to when we would have anticipated doing the big picture replacement.
Is that something we should take a look at, all the air handlers, as a possible way of moving the $250,000 further out by replacing the coils prior to a replacement of the entire unit?
I think that's something that we can assess. I mean, I'm not sure I have a specific answer, but I think it's worth investigating.
I can talk to Amoresco and Ellis Mechanical just to get their thoughts too.
And then since I'm on a roll with air handlers, the ones with aquatics. were the
I was
ones-
just thinking you were full of hot air, but that's okay.
The ones with aquatics were the ones we were always the most worried about because the only way to get them out was to take the roof off the building.
Yeah, you're thinking of the dehumidifiers. That's a little bit different.
Yeah,
The Dectrons is what you're
yeah,
thinking
the
of.
Dectrons, how are those operating?
So those were included in the rebuild of the guaranteed energy savings program. I mean,
They were rebuilt from the inside.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
they
versus replacement, right?
yeah,
they basically gutted the entire inside of the units and rebuilt them on the inside. So that way, we have almost a brand-new stuff inside the shell that prevented us from having to take the walls out or the roof off and put new
Yeah,
units.
they've been rebuilt. We did have some issues with chloramines deteriorating some stuff after the rebuild, but we think that we've gotten that under control since. And the expense to repair that issue wasn't extensive, so so far so good. I mean, I have my own opinion on Dectrons. We can
I have
talk
an
about that.
opinion, too.
I know that you do as well. But yeah, I think we're in good shape for now.
Great, thank you
And
very
for our
much.
new board members, when I'm teasing Mark, I worked for him for many, many years, so he knows I'm joking. I don't want to be perceived as being rude.
And Eric and I both used to be the directors of the community center, and so we have a lot of inherent knowledge of the facility. Eric oversaw a lot of the aquatic operations and was the director for a couple of years, and I was in that role before him, so.
Well, and I'll chime in because I have my favorite contractors and unfavorite contractors, and, don't tell me you have to always take the lowest. We've had this discussion, Brian, over 20 years. Huh? I just had one comment. I noticed on the P&L for the extended school enrichment that we're starting the specials earlier in the year, so apparently that was sort of a dead time prior. But I was most interested in the ESE Parent Advisory Committee. Can you just say a word about that?
Oh, the Parent Advisory Committee was something that they set up 2 years ago, and they do quarterly meetings with parents from each of the respective schools that we facilitate the program in. And they get a ton of feedback with regards to anything from, student voice and choice to the different types of programs that they're operating, the enrichment specials and stuff like that. So this was something that the PAC recommended, and our team was more than happy to accommodate, which was just starting those enrichment specials a little bit earlier than we typically do.
So are there more of them then?
I
Or
wouldn't
just-
say there's more. Yeah, they've ramped them up the last couple of years. They're just starting them earlier in the school year.
Okay. Go ahead, Riddy.
That was the first year I was a committee member from our school, and it was a part of one of the things some of the schools locally were doing, but not all across Carmel. And once all the parents met, it kind of seemed like a good idea that the first hour that they spend doing homework, which now the emphasis is not to have a lot of homework, it was just hanging out with friends. So bringing in specials seemed like a good idea.
Okay. Oh,
So I think it's been great for schools that, at least at our school, it has been great.
okay, good. Any other questions for staff? Then we're ready to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Did I say that? Anyone opposed? All right, the financial reports, P&Ls are approved. Treasurer claims.
I move to approve payroll wages and liabilities for payroll dates February 7th, 2025 and February 21st, 2025.
Is there a second?
And also the claims, right?
Was that,
Pardon?
The last one, I
Second
think, was
B.
approval of the financial
Unless you wanna
reports
do
and
them separate.
P&Ls.
Oh, yeah. I move to adopt the resolution of G 2025
no,
dash.
no, no.
No?
B. B. First you did claims.
Claim sheet for
Now do
March
the
11th
payroll.
and the
Well, that wasn't
payrolls.
Oh, did you
No, he has to do the claim sheet for March 11th.
first do the claim sheet?
Okay.
I know. You know, I have to say that I have struggled with the amount of paper since we've come back on the board. We never used to have this much, actually. And I know it's all necessary. I'm not complaining, but I do apologize because I've got to say, without Jen, sometimes I don't know where I am in this pile of stuff. And on a computer, it's not going to be any better. I'll be just totally lost.
Okay, I'm back. And I found this piece of paper that I forgot to mark, so. Okay, I'm gonna start this whole thing over. I move to approve the claim sheet dated March 11th, 2025, and I move to approve, along with that, payroll wages and liabilities for payroll dates February 7th, 2025, and February 21st, 2025.
Second.
Okay, we'll have Jen second those. Any questions for staff on the claims? All those in favor signify, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
Did I do that wrong, Brian? Yes, somebody else said yes.
He started over.
I completely started over. Yeah, it was on the rewind.
Okay, we're on to monetary gifts, grants, partnerships, and sponsorships for February. Eric?
We had 3 contributions last month, technically 2 contributions last month, but as I stated at the last meeting, we did have a late contribution from the Carmel Clay Parks Foundation right at the end of January, so it didn't make it into our full report and everything, but wanted to obviously make sure that that got mentioned. So that was for $25,000 as a part of a grant match, a grant that we received for invasive species that we have planned for this year. And then we received a sponsorship for $500 from Scent Hound, Indiana. So they've been sponsoring most all of last year, and then starting again this year for the dog pot stations along the Monon. And then a $100 donation from our anonymous donor for staff appreciation.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept, or for questions first. Do you have a question, Jen? Oh, okay. I'll entertain a motion for acceptance of the gifts, grants, sponsorships for February 2025.
I move that we accept all of the monies and thank our partners and donors, anonymous, and folks that sponsor us.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jonathan, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to new business, Resolution G 2025-004. So this was a very comprehensive list, Michael.
This is a very
Yeah.
comprehensive list. So tonight, we're asking the Park Board to approve Resolution G 2025-004, which was prepared by legal counsel. This is actually almost somewhat a continuation of an action that was taken by the Park Board at your last meeting, where we're transferring assets that were funded with township dollars to the Park Board so that they can be officially included on the City of Carmel's asset list as our fiscal officer, effectively under the CFO for the city. Clay Township had issued approximately $30 million in projects through the Clay Township Impact Program to do extensive renovations and upgrades and reimagination of our park system over the last several years. And fortunately, a lot of those projects are now completed. Because those funds used dollars that were issued by the township, the State Board of Accounts views those as township assets, even though the township did those projects on our behalf, on behalf of the board. And what this agreement does is officially close out the projects and transfer those assets to the Park Board. And then, like I said, what that allows us to do is work with the CFO of the city so that it goes on the city's assets on behalf of the Park Board to keep the State Board of Accounts happy. It's really kind of a dotting the I's and crossing the T's action, but is something that was required under the project agreements that the Park Board initially approved to authorize these projects to take place in the first place. Brian? did I leave
I'll just
anything?
add a few things. So there was an original project agreement between the township and the park board for the 2019 projects. That was amended to include the pedestrian bridge project from the 2020 bond issue, and then amended again for the 2022 Clay Township bond issue for a few additional projects. And you'll see both a description of each of those projects and then kind of a index before the color asset lists. CTI, at our request, put together the asset list so that there's clear transfer of these assets to the township. I think it includes almost all the assets from all the projects, even though some of them aren't completed yet. And you'll see that there are still 5 outstanding projects, really 4, because the Japanese Gardens is really one project, although it's out of 2 bond issues. That one is anticipated now to close in 2026, I think, probably next year. Pedestrian Bridge, I hear, is for the end of 2025. I'll watch to see if that really happens or not. That seems a little early to me. And then you've got the Carter Green Palladium Plaza, the Japanese, which you already talked about, and then a general parks renovation that's doing some mop-up on some other of the original projects and making some additions. So the resolution actually approves the project closeout agreement, and then it authorizes the director to amend that when these other projects are done. The township has adopted this identical resolution and transfer and authorized the trustee to do the same thing, just to add to the list when they're done, rather than bringing it back for another resolution. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions regarding this resolution? Mark, go ahead.
Okay, I got questions as usual. Well, some of these I completely understand because they're park properties. Obviously, the Chinese Garden and Carter Green have not historically been parks.
Just for international relations situation, we'll call it the Japanese Garden.
What did I say?
It's
You
Chinese.
said Chinese, but it's the
Chinese, sorry.
Japanese, yeah.
That was an oversight, but.
HK
Must be
San.
where my mind
HK
is.
San.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi.
Okay.
Would take
Yeah, the
offense.
Japanese.
Great offense.
Structure and Carter Green. So does that mean that we're taking over those to maintain as well?
So for the Japanese garden, the township's intention is for those to once they're completed, for responsibility for that asset to transfer to Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation and fall under the park board, as opposed to retaining within the city. We did factor those into our budget proposals to the city of Carmel, and expenses for those are factored into our 2025 budget and will also be included in our 2026 budget. But for the Japanese garden specifically, yes. For Carter Green and Palladium Plaza, there are some areas along the immediate side right by the trail will fall to us. The rest of those will remain with the city. But because they were park-related in the project, they showed it as a park project.
Yeah, there were 2 project agreements. One with the park board that had all these park projects on it, and then one with the city that had all the fire department projects, including the new headquarters. Actually, there were 2 more. One with the Dad's Club for the 2019 and 2020 bond issue for Badger Field House and the Fields, and the Carmel Clay Historical Society, which has also just been closed out. So the projects were initially divided up into kind of park-related, fire-related, and then, the 2 non-related entities. So I don't think there's I don't know that just this transfer of the assets transfers responsibility to parks. I think we anticipate that there will be a management agreement, that there's a couple hanging out there. We've drafted one that would be a blanket management agreement between the city and the park department, setting forth the management responsibilities.
Is that based upon the existing management agreements that we have?
More or less. I've cleaned, yeah.
You cleaned
There's
it up some.
some of the old ones were pretty bad. So we cleaned it up for the, what's the hotel?
For the public restrooms off the Carmichael Hotel, those are ones that were constructed by the CRC, and we've assumed management responsibilities.
So we cleaned that management agreement up from the old ones, and that's a template now for future management agreements, which we've got in the can on our side, waiting for the projects to be completed, and we'll head to that.
Brian, did you take a look at the other existing agreements like the Monon Trail and Hagenberg and such that?
And that was part of what was driving this as well, because obviously the original management agreement for the Monon Greenway envisioned the original greenway that was constructed over 20 years ago, and not what Midtown Plaza is today, not what the Monon Boulevard section of the greenway is today. So the idea is, while we haven't crafted those, it hasn't been approved by BPW as of yet, the goal is to, as these new assets come online, we bring them underneath with the appropriate attachments so that these new spaces are reflected in the management agreement appropriately. So
Frankly, it was shared with prior corporation counsel. We got a little backlog of pending items with the current corporation counsel, so I'm not unloading the whole apple cart on her at this point. So when we get there, I'm sure they will have some additional comments.
Without a doubt. But that cleans up all these agreements.
That is the hope, that I would like for you to have a single management agreement
For all the properties.
for all the properties. The Carmichael situation will probably be different because it's with CRC, I think, actually.
Now, if that's done, what occurs if and when the department falls under the city completely? Do those management contracts stay in place, or do they
Probably
just
just
go away?
becomes an internal memo
Okay,
if the parties merge.
okay. And that's the way you think that would happen, because these assets would then have to be merged in?
yeah, under the interlocal, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, the assets would automatically go to the city. The city's already maintaining the list as if it's theirs, but we distinguish between park board and city, so it becomes a consolidated list effectively. And, you know, we would be tasked, I presume, to continue to manage these assets, but, you know, we'd be managing the city's assets as a city board.
It'd probably become a policy,
And
Mark,
some,
rather than agreement.
okay,
That's what it
and
would be.
some of those assets, though, belong entitled to the park board. So we're talking about those going into the city at that time as well.
Yeah,
I think that's subject to discussion. Because the park board, if the agreement is not continued 2 years from now, the park board will still exist. It just won't have township participation on it.
So the park board could still retain ownership of,
It would
Correct.
not be
like
uncommon
Central
for
Park and West
a
Park.
municipal park board to own separately from the municipality park properties.
And since I wasn't around when Bear Creek was done at its initial phase, does that fall under?
that was
ownership of the park
purchased
board as
and
well?
is titled to
Park
the
board.
park board.
Okay. Thank you, that clarified everything in my mind. I appreciate it.
So who owns the retention pond that is the site of the Japanese garden at this point? It's the city or the developer?
City of Carmel,
City of Carmel has title to that.
correct.
The city owns all those just by this, you're not changing title to the
Okay.
property that the park board doesn't own,
Right.
right? So Palladium, Green, the Japanese gardens, those two certainly are owned by the city itself.
And in the short term, at least, whatever gets built that would be added to a list like this is the park boards. Okay. Okay. So that's not moving very quickly, is it? Exactly. The Japanese garden, I guess.
Hakura-san is an artist, not a park builder. So
Right.
he is ready to create. He will return and start placing rocks and bonsai trees, and is a very personalized design and service. It's pretty much so created finalized on the spot, so I've been told.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just to update you on this, there is much that you would think the primary constructor would do that CTI is doing, and we've had those discussions with the township, running bulldozers. Hakura-san does not do this. So CTI is kind of stepping into the gap, and the township has significantly increased the change order for that project.
And I
Facilitate that.
will note that this was a project that CCPR did not take the lead on as far as pretty much any role in it. We receive updates from the township, from CTI. Originally, the primary point people were the township and current chief infrastructure officer for the city, Jeremy Cashman. So this has not been a project that has been led by us, but one that we receive periodic updates on, so.
But if we're going to inherit those built assets, where is our
I don't
conversation?
assume that a couple of times. I don't think that is necessarily the plan.
Okay,
I've not heard anyone say that the city's going to transfer the ownership of that asset to the park board or that plot of land.
well, not the land, Brian.
But management,
Management agreement would require you to maintain it. We
Whatever they do. Are we getting some input on what they're,
we have been getting input, like, for example, I've provided strong input on what we would expect the level of vegetation around the water to be so that we can mitigate the amount of geese that are in there, following principles that are much similar to what we've done in Central Park and West Park, and what what we've done in open bodies of water. The artist is very much in tune with that same concept. So it's going to be probably a little bit more, to use a technical term, fussy than our traditional parks because it is a garden as opposed to the natural landscapes that we tend to preference. But it's also not going to be packed with annuals. It's going to be packed with perennials. So again, that concept is very much, in alignment with what our principles have been, as opposed to putting things that have to be planted each year. They're things that will grow back each year. Also, a lot of the plants that have been selected for it, are not necessarily what I will call invasives or exotic plants that are coming from Japan, but kind of Indiana equivalents, natives that are reflective of those type of things. Now, I'm sure there's going to be cherry trees and those type of things, but we're not going to be bringing in pear trees, for example, that are invasive, where they can use a red bud. That has been the preference. So looking at those things that are respective of our environment, but also respective of the design principles of a Japanese garden. So we've had a lot of those discussions to make sure that it's not inconsistent with what we've always tried to accomplish with our parks, to minimize the amount of high-level maintenance that we need. But I'm sure that it's going to have some components that are a little bit higher level than say, what we've experienced in most of Central Park outside of the water park.
If I could have one more thing, and Michael will know the details on this. Some of these, not your park properties, but some of these properties that are kind of questionable, the street department maintains
Correct.
currently, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Carter Green, there's been no
So-
discussion, for example, of us taking
Getting
over.
back to maintaining this landscape with the Japanese garden. Is there an understanding by the artist that even if you plant perennials, they oftentimes will spread so that the original design may not be stationary?
I'm going to say I think so.
he's one of the premier Japanese
Yeah.
garden designers in the world.
Yeah,
Okay.
He's not from here. You
right.
hadn't gathered by my addressing. So he is in Washington State, I think, or Oregon,
Okay.
Or Oregon.
Portland,
Or
Oregon,
Portland, yeah.
and flies in for this, so I think he knows what he's doing, Mark.
Okay.
The-
I wasn't sure where this was gonna go, because we had to deal with that once in the past where things move in nature.
No, I think I've been actually in the meetings that I've had with him, or maybe I've been very impressed with his knowledge and skill.
Okay.
I've also been impressed when he's sometimes had input from people that don't know what they're talking about, and he's like, "Thank you very much. You're dismissed now." So.
Well, he ought to know. It ought to be quite spectacular, but it's a huge challenge because having lived in Japan and familiar with Japanese gardens, to do it all on the slope into water is a little tricky. You won't have many stones.
Now, what I will say is most of the work is actually going to be transpiring around the original pond closest
Okay.
to City Hall, and
Okay.
a little bit of the area in between the ponds, including some water, like a water fountain feature that looks like a waterfall from the concept plans that sketches, artistic sketches that I've seen. The southern part of it that goes all the way to Carmel Drive, they'll trail around it, some degree of landscaping, but pretty minimal with that just because the dollars aren't going to go far enough. So that's viewed as subsequent opportunities for subsequent phases of expansion of the garden. So as you go south, I envision the level of maintenance needs not being as great because there's just simply not going to be as much landscaping that direction. There'll be some degree of landscaping, but it's not going to be necessarily a Japanese garden down there. It's just going to be,
So they're up on the flat.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Working with the flat. Okay. Okay. Do we need a motion?
Yes. I move to adopt Resolution G-2025-004 as presented.
Second.
Second by Jonathan. Any further questions for the new board members? This is going to be something that comes up on your watch. So I guess we asked a lot of questions, but we're trying to sort of set up what the expectation might be for this project because it is pretty unique. And he is a world-renowned landscape architect, so that is a very cool part of it. It's just, it needs to be manageable and maintainable.
exactly. And one thing I did neglect to say, the township, when they were making their investment in this garden, and this is not to take anything away from the street department, because I think we have a world-class street department here in Carmel, and they do a phenomenal job with the assets they manage. That being said, that this is going to become more of a park than what it historically has been, and Clay Township had higher confidence in us managing it as a park as opposed to a smaller specialty area. So that's why the township was so adamant that ultimate oversight, once it's developed, come to the park system because of the confidence they have in the park board and in the department.
Go ahead, Katie. Mhm.
This is a new project to me. I wasn't aware of this
Sure.
going on. So I'm trying to pick up context clues. It sounds like the artist works when he can or wants to. Is there any type of ETA on this project?
So my understanding is that a lot of it will be finished in April, but maybe,
Like this,
So-
like next month?
yeah. But there's a lot of work to do, so I'm more with Brian that it's probably towards this fall.
Michael, it might be helpful if you send out the name of the architect.
Absolutely.
And with his website, because it really is pretty cool.
Will do.
And I mean,
I butchered his name, I know it.
well, that's all right.
We always refer to him as HK because
Okay.
that
And-
way I do not butcher his name, so.
It's been a while since I looked at it, so I'm, until I see it, I can't pronounce it correctly, but
Karasu is his last name.
yeah.
If I
But just
Yeah.
send it out to the board.
What I will
and
also
just-
send out is the sketch that I have so that you can get a feel for what he's trying to accomplish with the garden.
Which
So-
apparently he accomplished in front of a group, just kind of, right? And it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So this is not consistent with how, for our new board members, how we usually do planning. This, for the A-type personality that I am, I've had to have a little bit of zen to get through this, so.
Back to China.
Multicultural here in Carmel, so.
Any other questions? But, okay, then all those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, old business.
No old business to bring before the board tonight.
Okay, attorney's report. Brian?
It was a relatively quiet month until this week, and we had several contracts, consultant contracts that we amended or generated. We have received the appraisals back for the Lawhead property and extended a offer consistent with what you approved previously. We're amending that to sweeten the pot a little bit with some additional costs that the park board can cover, and that'll be submitted back to the Lawheads tomorrow with the hope that they will be ready to enter into transaction.
Do you happen to have a picture or a map that you could pop up quickly for our new board members? Do you know? Okay, or
I
give
do
a quick
not.
description so that Josh, I think, Rita, you probably heard part of it, but.
If you're
John?
familiar with River Heritage Park, which is along 116th Street, a little bit north of, along River Road, just a little bit north of 116th Street, there is a Citizens water plant at that location as well. Just south of the entrance to the park, there is a old red brick house there that was actually it's the oldest existing home in the city of Carmel, what is now the city of Carmel, that was built by the Moffett family, and is the second oldest home in Hamilton County, behind only the Connor home in Connor Prairie. So a lot of historical significance to it. Within River Heritage Park, there is a old silo, grain bin, that is right next to our shelter. This is the house that goes with that old silo. It's part of the same farm. So there's a lot of interesting history there. And what the current property owners were interested in seeing this brought into the public domain so that it can be saved for the benefit of the community, knowing that, our historical, especially structures of this age, are pretty limited within Carmel and Clay Township. But also from a department standpoint, we see this as an opportunity to use it as a base for some of our summer camps, for some of our maybe future historical or environmental stewardship programs. So we see it as a unique opportunity and one that can actually, contribute enough revenue through the programming that we offer to cover the operating expenses for it. So one of those where the acquisition cost is going to be relatively minor compared to most things that we're buying. It contributes 3.22 acres, which actually fills out a corner of the park, provides an opportunity for new entrance into the park so that we can have a separated entrance from the water plant, because right now it looks like you're going to the water plant. Oh, here is where you turn to get into the park, whereas this will allow us to create its own identity for the park. So a lot of, I think, potential gains to the park system, consistent with our master plan, comprehensive master plan that looks at enhancing opportunities along the White River corridor. So we're pretty excited about this, and one of those opportunities that we couldn't plan for in our comprehensive master plan, like we didn't specifically say we want this property. It was one of those opportunities where the property owner just cold called me to see if we might be interested in it. So one of the things that I think has always been part of the successes of Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation and the Park Board is having enough flexibility that when unique opportunities come, especially if it fits the bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish, that we pursue those. And this definitely represents one of those opportunities.
And if I could just give a moment on process, especially for the newish people. Anytime a public body, with the exception of redevelopment commissions, desires to purchase a piece of property, there's a process, statutory process. the governing body has to adopt a resolution of interest, which this board did at the last meeting, and then obtain 2 appraisals, which we did, but even ordered them before the resolution of interest, which you can do. And then the board cannot pay more as the purchase price than the average of the 2 appraisals. For this property, that was $574,250, which was well below what the owner was interested in parting with the property for. So there are a few things that can be done. The park board, in addition to the appraised price, can pay brokerage fees and closing costs, and that's what we're doing with this and this property, bringing the total cost to about $605 for the property, presuming they accept it.
And we're not going, we will not be able to get up to what their preferred target is, so we're working somewhere in between and hoping that we are able to get close enough that everyone feels like we got the best deal possible, so.
Do we know how old the property is?
The house itself is 198 years old.
It was built in the 1830s. I want to say 1834, maybe,
Uh,
and actually the
No, it
actually older than
was
that,
1827.
20s, okay.
The
bricks-
silo on
Oh.
the screen up there is not the property itself, but that's the silo that goes would have gone with the property. So, and if you're looking, we're actually looking south on this particular photo. Restroom is to the right. It's right behind that tree line, so.
I'm curious how we've dated it,
From historical records, so.
like
yeah.
city records.
From city records, from the families. We also have, some of our other properties along the river have been owned by the Moffett property, where our new trailhead for the White River Greenway North Extension, not too far from your place, that was owned by descendants of the Moffett family. And we actually have a book from the Moffetts talking about their history, so it's also documented in their book. So several different ways where we were able to validate the age of it. And because of the fact that it is the second oldest, the Carmen Clay Historical Society knows about it. You know, there's a lot of knowledge and history written about this, if not specifically about the house, about the family that references the house.
We bought a property that has a barn from 1830 on it, and we had to bring in somebody from Conner Prairie to date the nails to figure out when it was actually constructed. So it was I was curious what
What's interesting about this house too is the floor plan, talking to the current owners, is very similar to the Conner house. Built within a couple years of that, 1 to 2 years of that house, so they may have, I'm sure there weren't a lot of settlers at that time in the county, so there was probably a lot of conversation between the Moffetts and the Connors as to what they were doing and sharing a plan, so, but if you go into them, they feel similar in many ways.
When we were working with the Moffett family to purchase that property, they actually had the original deed to the property signed by Andrew Jackson, and it was not on paper. It was on a skin.
And I apologize for talking too much.
No, that's okay.
Oh, no.
That's,
Curiosity to me, I believe the Moffetts also own another property on Gray Road that's a Jackson Land Grant, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
I believe it would not surprise me if they did.
Property.
Yeah.
When you say it's the oldest, that's a curiosity to me.
Yeah.
In the area.
Absolutely.
Because the Moffetts, there's 2 different families of Moffetts, but actually the family members, until Jess Lawhead bought it, actually it was owned by descendants. They were all related back. So the historical record on this is really clear. And the Historical Society, that's how I was first aware of it, like 30 years ago, was interested in acquiring it. And then, I forget the fellow who was the descendant who owned it, they ended up selling it to Jess in the end, because Historical Society couldn't get the money together. But so to have this happen now, 35 years later, is really pretty cool. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, do we know how long Jess has owned it?
I do. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's longer than that.
Yeah, it's long. It's not 30,
I think
but
it's
that's when we
around
first talked.
10 to 12
Yeah,
years
that's what I'm
is what
thinking.
recollection is. I could be off by a few years there, but
He's a realtor, correct?
he is.
Yeah. Could be 15, anyway, but, yep. Okay, thank you for the update, Michael. Okay, anything else, Brian? Okay. Director's report, Michael?
Well, Mr. Bosma stole my thunder on the the River Road property, which is fine. So, no, that's okay. Another thing that I'm very excited about is this past weekend, Lucky Climber was finishing up installation of the indoor play piece that will be in the Monon Community Center. So we're not ready for opening yet, but the structure is built. We've seen it lit up. Some of us have gone down the slides. I would like to pretend that I was the first one to go down, but I know staff beat me to it this weekend, so that's okay. I won't hold too big of a grudge. And but anyway, so it's going to be truly a phenomenal amenity for the residents and provide that year-round play experience for families, especially with smaller kids. So we're super excited about that. Some of the other amenities, the 2 to 5 year old playground has also been installed. It was assembled by our very own Eric Mel. It was almost like assembling an IKEA structure on steroids and stuff. But it looks like if you're in that 2 to 5 year range, it will be a magical place to play. The mats that kind of represent like a river experience, also within the 2 to 5 year old play zone, were installed just recently, and also should be a great place for bouncing and imagineering being on a river without actually being in a river. So that should be a lot of fun, and the other features will continue to be installed. This week, they'll bring the flooring, the vinyl flooring into the space first to get it acclimated and then start installation. We do anticipate being in substantial completion next month, but it'll probably be May before we actually open it to the public. So we're not prepared to announce exactly when that happens, but we are getting very close and very excited about that. Continue to work with the City of Carmel on the request for proposals for a business plan for Brookshire Golf Course. That is one where it is a facility that is owned by the CRC and managed by a department of the City of Carmel. Mayor Finkum, dating back to when she was on the City Council, always was interested to see if it might make sense for that golf course to fall under Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation. Mayor Brainerd at one point tried to sell it to us, and that didn't particularly make sense. But one of the things that I recommended and the mayor was receptive to is developing a business plan so that, and the golf course has, under city leadership, never had a business plan like our community center has, like extended school enrichment has. So we're helping the city to create a business plan. The city is funding the business plan. Part of the due diligence of the business plan is also to identify, does it make sense to be a standalone department as it is currently? Does it make sense to fall under the City of Carmel? So the mayor, elected officials, and the park board as well can make informed decisions about how we move forward with that asset. But continue to make progress as we're in the RFP has been issued. We're receiving questions from prospective vendors, and I think in about a couple weeks is when we actually do a review of the proposals once they come in and make a recommendation that will actually go to BPW. Since again, this is being funded by the city, we're just helping facilitate, not facilitate, but assist and provide our guidance in the master planning process, since we've done business plans before. We are also in ongoing conversations with legal counsel with regard to the $1 million grant that we received from Hamilton County that was intended to benefit both Conner Prairie and Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation in the area where the White River Greenway North Extension is going in. We are exploring how best to make that work, so I may have more information to present to the park board at your next meeting, but looking at how it's best for Conner Prairie to use the dollar amounts that make sense for their project that will also benefit and minimize disruptions to our White River Greenway without us getting too entangled in the actual construction of what they're wanting to do. So hopefully we have identified a path forward for that, and we'll have more information at subsequent meetings. And then finally, continuing to work with the City of Carmel, especially with Jeremy Cashman, the Chief Infrastructure Officer, as it comes to planning for the Autumn Greenway, and the name that's currently being used for the North-South Greenway is the Veterans Greenway that will provide the connectivity within the Central Core, connecting sort of the Old Meridian corridor to the Monon Greenway and Midtown City Center corridor. So working with consultants to begin developing planning for that, which will, and also the specific easements that we need, so that working with the city, we can secure the property needed to make those greenways a reality. But appreciate the assistance and guidance, and in some cases, lead that Jeremy Cashman is providing to make what's truly going to be a jointly developed project a reality for our community. With that, be happy to address any questions the board may have.
Any questions for Director? Go ahead, Mark.
With all this discussion about Moffitt's, it tickled my brain on a couple of issues. Going back to the property that Justin developed south of us,
Yes.
where the windmill is and all that.
Sunrise on the Monon.
Right. Was there ever an official dedication of that? Where the family, because we had committed at the time of closing that once it was all built, we would invite the family, and I know COVID came up as well, so did that get lost in that?
Old Town Design Group worked with the family. There is a commemorative plaque that was coordinated in coordination with the family that is actually on the entry point into that park, Vera J. Henshaw Park and Nature Preserve. So that transpired. I don't know if Old Town did a celebration specific with them that we weren't a party of, but we weren't involved specifically in that. But I know that all the communication had been through Old Town with the family, and to my knowledge, they are happy, but I can validate.
Okay. The other thing is that Justin and I had worked out was that whoever was the director of the department would be on the homeowners association board with veto power. Did that ever get completed?
That did get completed. I do receive notices and meeting notices. I only go to the ones that are relevant if it pertains to the park. But that has transpired. The property has been properly deeded to the park board. They are taking care of the maintenance responsibilities other than what we agreed to do, which is basically emptying the trash and stocking and emptying the dog pot station.
Now, one of the concerns we had when we were trying to draft those documents was the woods that the family donated to us, and that we could ensure that they were protected so the homeowners didn't start expanding onto that property.
I would like to say, to the best of our ability, we've been trying to keep them off. It has been signed. We have had a number of stewardship projects that our Parks and Natural Resources team has led with volunteers, as far as some invasive removals and additions of native plants within the preserve part of the park. So we have had our eyes on it. I would say it's a, as you know, a forever battle to keep our neighbors out of the parks. No. Yeah. Different spot. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But we do have it signed.
The border is signed. Yeah.
We go through this all the time. Would it be better to put a little split rail fence or something up? Does that help?
That adds to our costs.
Yeah.
And then sets a precedent, an expectation that we do that in other parks. And we've fought pretty hard to say that our borders are vegetative.
Yeah, because we always were getting calls from neighbors wanting us to put up a fence to keep people out of their yards. So.
We also have just updated, I think in the last year, our encroachment protocol. So our staff are actually going out and doing visual inspections on a regular recurring basis of our parks. And we have addressed a couple of encroachments with KGR. One of them that Brian just referenced was a fence that was constructed on our property at Meadowlark Park. And the homeowner did remove it at our request. So I think our team's doing a pretty good job of monitoring that currently.
And we also have found some encroachments within Central Park and places that we've addressed in the past, like along Guilford Park, our border with Guilford Park. And again, through those recurring inspections that our Parks and Natural Resources team is doing, we were able to catch that. And I don't think those rose to the fact that we had to engage KGR to get those resolved. But I think we're doing an admirable job of trying to ensure that our neighbors are respectful of our properties. Obviously, we want them to visit our properties. We don't want them to claim our properties. So.
This has historically been an issue. The first real go-round on this was when, over on the river trail, the property owner of a beautiful new house just bulldozed all the way to the riverbank and pushed it over. Everything, the trees, everything. Oh my gosh. So that ended up being a bit of a legal battle to even get him. And he was a developer. He knew better. I mean, he should have.
It's one of those things that it is such a prevalent issue with parks departments around the country that it is actually one of the accreditation standards is that you're supposed to have a defense against encroachment and policies and protocols to protect against it to achieve national accreditation, which we have. So we already had those in place, but
Long
you
as
don't have an
stay on top
accreditation
of it.
standard if we're the only one that has it. So.
Yeah, long as the staff's on top of it, or, I mean, otherwise, it's me and my pitchfork again. Okay. Okay, anything else for Michael? All right. Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Okay, the indoor playground looks so good. I got to see it on my tour with Michael last week. I had a question I thought of later. Do you guys have a social strategy to promote that leading up to the opening?
We do. Our marketing team we're coming up with a logo for this place. Not that we try to have a lot of logos, but this is a unique space. I mean, just like our parks have names, this is basically an indoor park. So we'll be rolling that out. We will be, giving some teasers and stuff with regard to this. The paper on the big glass and doors that will be the entrance to it came down over the weekend and stuff. So members of the Monon Community Center and visitors to the community center are now able to, when they're going to the fitness center or coming into the building, to be able to get glimpses of it, which is sparking conversations to our front desk. So we, all part of the strategy, but yeah, marketing is drooling to
It's
be
all
able to
over
start
it.
promoting
Okay.
it. So.
I figured, it deserves all the hype.
Yeah. And without the lights on, it just doesn't do it justice. When the lights are changing colors on the different petals or leaves, it really is going to be a spectacular, imaginative space for the kiddos.
I saw one of the light brights at the Heard Museum in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago. They've got a small one. I think ours is bigger, but it is very cool. Even I wanted to go in and play with it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Any other questions?
Like I said, the director may have, before this meeting, inspected the two slides. I feel an obligation to the families and kids of Carmel to make sure that they're okay.
All right, we'll move on then to information items. Plan Commission, Jonathan, anything to report?
Yeah, just a couple quick updates. Last week, we had a committee of the whole where we approved the Swinley Forest plat, primary plat. So that is about a 7-acre parcel of land just west of the administrative offices, between the administrative offices and the Monon Trail, Monon Greenway. It's a 4-lot subdivision that we approved. And then we also approved some revisions to the Gramercy development plan, multifamily residential and some townhomes. So we've got some more cases coming up in 2 weeks. I've seen some emails going around, but that's all for right now, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Jonathan? Okay, thank you. School Board, John?
Thanks. Just one update. You may or may not have heard, we are currently developing a new strategic plan for the school district being led by Dr. Ostrike, who will be our new superintendent starting in July. He's currently doing some focus groups and soliciting feedback from the community. He did do one open community feedback session in February. There's another one coming up next Thursday night, so anybody is welcome to attend. It's being held at the school district office next Thursday night at 6 o'clock. So if anybody is interested in joining, lasts about 90 minutes, so next Thursday at 6 o'clock at the school district office. So feel free to show up. I shadowed last month's session. It's really interesting to listen to what folks have to say, and it'll help shape the direction the school district goes for the next 3 years. So.
Thank you. Any questions for, okay. Climate action, Eric?
Nothing to report on climate action.
Okay. Parks Foundation, well, we have not met, but as a group, we are in the process of doing a strategic plan and establishing some goals and things, and you're going to be interviewed tomorrow, I
It's
think?
interviewed today.
Today,
so-
okay.
So.
Alrighty.
Leah, who is the current treasurer of the Parks Foundation, is interviewing foundation board members, interviewed me just like what we do when we do our comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, getting the feedback, trying to make sure that we can identify a vision, mission, and strategic goals for the foundation to help the foundation grow, become a more viable asset for the community and a support function for parks. Obviously, we have challenges with our capital funding. In my conversation, I stressed I'm not looking to the foundation to be the capital funding source. That's not realistic. That's not fair. It's probably not even appropriate. But I do think that they are part of the piece of the puzzles to help ensure that Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation remains the innovative park system that it has been for pretty much most of its history. So appreciate Leah taking that on gratis, because she does this for a living, and she's doing this as a passion of love for parks. So appreciate that, and I'm sure more to come.
So just for the general information of the rest of the board, so there are 3 of us that are on the Park Foundation. So Katie's a relatively new member. Mark just came on, and I guess I've been on since the beginning, maybe 2011. So it was formed with some endowment funds at the Hamilton County Community Foundation, CICF. And so those have grown, and some of these invasive species fighting projects are funded by the Parks Foundation. And we funded half the salary for Carrie Berger, who was one of the latest employees, who is what is her official title?
Resource Development Coordinator. So she's helping us pursue grants, sponsorships, donations, those type of things to provide additional money. She's not an employee of the foundation, but she uses the foundation as one of the instruments in her toolkit. Some grants come directly towards us. Some of them, it makes more sense to leverage the foundation's 501c3 status. Some grants we can't
just
get.
pass them through,
So
yeah.
wherever it makes the most sense to try to get these grants and sponsorships, she's working with the foundation to do that.
Okay. Now we're on to Park Board comments and discussion.
Judy, one
Yes,
last
go
thing
ahead.
I neglected to do.
yes.
You may have already received the digital version
Yes. Yep.
last week, but we are pleased to present the 2024 annual report. The digital version is also on our website, was distributed to all of our elected officials, both with the city and the township, and hard copies are available at the community center, here at the township offices, at the park offices, at City Hall, and I believe also at the main library on Main Street here in Carmel. But a lot of information about successes we had last year, and obviously, as always, look forward to build upon what we've done in the past to continue to provide the best park system for our residents.
This is always an excellent report, and the older ones are on the website still, right? Okay, so if you want to look back, it'll give you a real good idea of
I
what
want to give
it
a
is.
special shout out to Heston Godby and Trudy Kohler from our marketing team for pulling this together. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of time to put
Yeah.
this document together, and they busted their tails doing it. Also, Sandy Young, who just retired from the department, was our longtime executive assistant. She was phenomenal when it came to proofing this type of documentation before it went out to the public, and this was the last document she worked on for the department, and I know we need to get her a copy because she was really proud of it, so.
She should be.
Director's letter, she was literally doing on her last full day, so.
Oh, good for Sandy. Good for Sandy. Okay, if there is nothing else to come before the board, any other questions? Again, welcome to all our new members. We're excited to have you, the next generation. So looking forward, we'll have some kind of workshop, maybe in the second quarter. We need to sort of flesh that out, but it will be, or at least my intent is for it to be very informal, more like a coffee klatch kind of a thing. I mean, we have to do whatever proper notices we need to do, but just to have an informal conversation about a little bit of history, but more going forward and the challenges we're facing now, and sort of handing off to you all. So it'll be on the agenda sometime, I want to say second or third quarter. Do we know when budgets start this year, Michael, yet?
Based on information I received today, we should receive guidance from the city around June 1st.
Okay.
Health insurance information is anticipated around June 15th. And for the general fund, our initial draft goes to the mayor's office probably somewhere around July 15th. Specific dates haven't, but those are our general ideas as to when that'll be happening. So
Okay.
if we can do it around that time frame, because obviously budgets are important to how we
Right.
achieve our strategies. So.
Yep. Okay. And if there's nothing else to come before the group, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, yes, go ahead, go ahead.
I was actually looking at query. So we have been to the Japanese Garden Community in Portland, and it was actually a focal point of interest. Like a lot of visitors.
Yes.
And Portland is like known for that. So I was like just verifying, is it the same designer or not?
From my understanding is there were several designers involved with the Portland one, but he has been involved in some of the components of it. So absolutely, yes.
That's like on his website, it seems like one of the main ones.
Yeah.
There are a couple that are listed on there that are United States.
Yeah. It's going to be pretty cool.
It will be.
Okay, Jen moved. I declare us adjourned then at 7:25.